Damn, can't lose there.
Howdy. Welcome to another conversation on Frontlines to Frontiers. My name is Case Copeland with Divergence Academy, and today we're joined by Mike Williams and Brett Harder.
Hello.
Awesome. So today we're going to be talking about all things NEI, our new program, the Network Engineering Immersive. So right off the bat, give us a little background history. How far are we into this?
How far are we into the current one?
Well, several months of development. So this has been cooking for a year?
No, it's probably been over a year, and then we had ideas on it before that even, but probably really started development around a year or so ago.
Okay.
But NEI is it's Network Engineering Immersive, and it focuses on networking. We cover Net Plus. We also cover some other things that are around networking, like network project, not really management, but just working on network projects. So we have a few different scenarios that the students go through. We also cover some basics of scripting, because network engineers often deal with editing configs and things like that with scripts. And as Michael knows, dealing with creating accounts, lots of accounts.
Yeah.
Scripting really helps with that too.
Gotcha. So Mike, on today's conversation, need you to be the voice for the learner, since we know that you are the voracious learner in all things. You're up to 27 certifications now, something like that.
Just seven.
So from the student experience, is the scripting, is that a prerequisite? Do you need to come in with some sort of scripting momentum? What's the challenge if you don't have that scripting?
It's not required that you come in with it, because we'll take people at all levels. Having a bit of background knowledge on scripting, though, certainly makes the process a bit easier, because it's more of an instance where you're going to be using some different type of syntax. So the language is all essentially the same. It's just the way that you construct it, whether you're using Bash or PowerShell or Python.
Okay. So then that means the entrance into this program, we still can get a pretty wide range of experience for people coming into the program?
Yeah, as far as the program is designed, they don't have to have any scripting experience. The scripting coverage that we do is the very basics of scripting, so just understanding like conditional statements, variables, arrays, and things like that. And then the focus is on manipulating text data, because that's normally what a network engineer would deal with.
Okay.
So it is very basic. They don't need any prior knowledge. They're going to learn what they need in the class.
Well, based on that, I'm going to play one of my favorite roles. It's the chimpanzee in the room. Okay. So when you talk about network engineer, that specific role, talk a little bit about like that job. What does it require? What are the responsibilities? What would somebody be working towards by going through this program?
Well, the program really just focuses on networking in general, so it's not specific to any specific network role. But as far as networking goes, people who work with networks work with network equipment, firewalls, switches, access points, and things like that. They also usually are involved in the IP design of their environment and managing the networks and subnets. So the program itself would give anyone who's coming in what they need in order to move into a networking-focused portion of IT. That could be network engineer, it could be network security, whatever. It just covers the kind of general coverage of all of networking.
You know, all heavy on the infrastructure side.
And heavy on the basics of networking and on managing network equipment, specifically Fortinet network.
So is it necessary to say that security is of course embedded throughout the program, or is that just a given nowadays? Security is a part of everything.
In my opinion, from a network perspective, security is always part of it, because you're dealing with firewall rules allowing and denying traffic. So there's not a way to separate security from networking, really.
Okay. Well, so that prompts the next question, since our cybersecurity program, the pen testing program, is our flagship. That's our main one. How is this one distinctly different from the cybersecurity program?
Cybersecurity is pen testing focused. So it is focused on the pen testing side, and it does go through the general knowledge of basics of networking and security and a little bit of Linux. but it is focused on pen testing. So kind of the coverage for the pen testing course is general IT plus pen testing. The coverage for the NEI course is all networking, entirely all networking.
Gotcha.
So it's really heavily focused on the network side.
And since you went through the pen testing program, so is this NEI, is this one of those like, all right, that's my next one, I want to go through that myself, even though you're working?
There are definitely parts of it, yes, that I do want to check out, mainly the Fortinet specific stuff, because we use that in our own network. So it's nice to get like that kind of additional training because it's vendor specific. Whereas
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Go for
I'm
it.
sorry, I hate to interrupt the
you're
flow.
fine.
I completely forgot. Since we've talked with Brett before, we know, a director of IT and instructor. We didn't do a full introduction, so please tell us a little bit more. You are the systems engineer
Yes.
for Divergence,
So-
which means a lot of the learning from the NEI would be very applicable to what you have your hands on now.
Yeah, definitely. So, as the systems engineer for Divergence Academy, part of what I do is helping with not only just provisioning user accounts and setting up different parts of the network with Brett here, but any kind of task that we can potentially automate or script out, which is something that you would be using in NEI, is things that I apply to for the job as well. In fact, we've done demonstrations of scripts that I have written for the class and showing them like when you learn the fundamentals of scripting, you can use this to make your job easier. So like part of what we do is provisioning VPN accounts for people that need to remote into our network to access our labs. And when you have multiple cohorts running at a time, you may be getting something like 50 students at a time that are going to be accessing our network. And you have to create an individual account for each one of those students. And manually, if you were to do it just one step at a time, probably takes 6 or 7 minutes per account. And then you look at that thing as a whole, you're looking at several hours. Whereas if you take the time to write one script, which may take you a bit of time, but in the interim, you're going to end up with a script that'll allow you to do that whole task in like 3 minutes flat.
Okay.
And that's something that gets brought into network engineering immersive that we end up doing.
Oh, cool. All right, so forgive that slight detour
No,
in the
it's
conversation.
totally fine.
But now let's do talk about something. I know you're a little more excited about the actual content in it. So I know your career pathway, you've talked about you've been a Fortinet guy in your last couple of jobs. So tell us about the content that's actually in the program, because I think you were the driving voice on a lot of the Fortinet decisions. How do we get to that decision?
Yeah, so we kind of covered a little bit of the content earlier, so I'll kind of pick up where I left off. We left off at scripting. Following the scripting section, we have Fortinet coverage. And for the Fortinet coverage, we go through, Fortinet just recently changed their certification path names. So these are new names. It used to be NSE1, NSE2, NSE4. The new one is Fortinet Certified Associate, FCA, and then Fortinet Certified Professional. And for the class, we go through both of those. So we go through the FCA portion, which is kind of the entry-level portion. And then for FCP, there are different specializations, and the one that we go into is network security. And we go through all of the official Fortinet training to cover both of those certifications. And we also use the Fortinet labs from Fortinet. And in addition to going through that content, the students also get a FortiGate 40F, which is a physical FortiGate firewall. Fortinet's firewall product is FortiGate. And they connect that to our lab environment, and they're able to use it along with the Fortinet content. And also earlier in the program, when we go through Wireshark and scripting, they can use it along with that as well. To get more back to your actual question about why Fortinet, Fortinet is just a good enterprise vendor. I'd worked with them at a couple of previous jobs, and I was really satisfied with them. In comparison to other vendors, they have a more modern just design to them, in my opinion. And they just work really well. Never had any trouble with them. And also, they're really heavily focused on security, and that's an important aspect for me. So it just felt like a natural decision to include it in the program.
So I know with the cybersecurity program, the pen testing program, it's heavy in CompTIA, which means we are always responsible for keeping up with the evolutions, the versions as again, CompTIA is going through their decisions that are responses to the industry. You mentioned Fortinet also going through its own transitions with new certification titles. Is that reflective of needs in the industry right now?
I don't know for sure, but if I had to guess, it was probably just kind of a standardization thing.
Okay.
Yeah, I think part of what you see there is like with the older version you'd mentioned, it was all like numbered, right? So it's kind of like a weird structure for it. Whereas one of the other common networking certifications you see is Cisco, and they have CCNA, which is the associate, and then the professional and expert level, and that they've kind of like mirrored that in a sense, because I think what they're trying to do is saying, hey, if you have this, it's the equivalent, but with our equipment. So
Oh,
I'm
okay.
thinking
Makes
it's
sense.
more of that, because you still see in the industry quite a bit that people are saying Cisco, 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 despite the fact that they have lost market share. Their command line is a bit archaic, but it's still taught in like universities just because of that foothold they have.
Well, because there's always the element of legacy knowledge, legacy equipment, legacy
Yes.
everything. So nothing ever just goes away. But Fortinet apparently is on the up and coming. So this is very valuable experience if somebody's getting into certain. Is it industry specific? Are there tendencies towards certain industries for the content in this program?
No, not really. I mean, as far as our coverage of networking goes, there's no specific industry that we're targeting. Fortinet does get used in all sorts of different industries. They have small and medium business customers, and they have really, really big customers like the U.S. government. So it's a wide range, and our students coming out of the program should fit within any of them.
Okay. So where in the program we go with the choose your own adventure metaphor? We get such a diverse range of people coming in as inputs. All different levels of experience and interest. Can you talk a little bit about the output range as well? Like how many different directions can people go in this? Again, thinking about the variants and their knowledge and experience coming in. I assume everybody can probably hit that first certification, but the advanced students probably can tackle a little bit more. What's the range and potential outcomes?
Well, the program is designed for them to go through the FCA and the FCP through both of them. So we cover both of the content. We don't have any numbers on, because the first class hasn't ended yet, so we don't have numbers on how that plays out. But I would expect that all of them could get all of the certifications.
Oh, that'd be exciting.
I don't think that there's any reason why they couldn't. We go through the content, so they're not missing anything or anything like that. But in terms of knowledge on like where they can go after the program, any entry-level networking position should be fine for our students that are, there are some people that are just more into this type of stuff. They're more, they spend more time studying on their own, stuff like that. For the people that are like that, they could probably go straight into not necessarily an entry-level networking position, but just a more like mid-level.
So steep acceleration for those that want to, because
Yeah.
we forgot to mention this program is 520 hours, so it's a whole module longer than our other programs. So this is a
Right.
pretty big commitment, which I guess you need that time to fit in this much content.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us a bit more about that learner experience? What is this uphill climb like for novices?
So I would say like the first part of it is pretty straightforward because it's covering just network fundamentals. So it's CompTIA's Network Plus, and that is just giving you the bare bones basic stuff. That part I'd say is pretty straightforward. It's when you start getting into managing projects, or not managing projects, but working on a project with a small group where it starts to become a bit more difficult. Same with some of the scripting stuff, because maybe it's like a type of thought process and language that they're not necessarily familiar with yet. And then when you get into doing the Fortinet material specifically, that's where you really get your chance to kind of specialize and branch out just a little bit.
Okay.
So
Is there a difficult choice that students need to make to specialize? Do they have to choose a lane?
no, not for the associate level. The associate level is like pretty straightforward. It's only when you hit the professional level, the second tier, that you have to start to consider a branch out. But we focus in the network security specifically. But that kind of pathway is kind of like just like a general thing with IT. as a rule. Like when you start off in IT, you could do something like help desk or like junior systems administrator. But as you move up in the career, you're gonna have to pick a subspecialty. But when you're early in your career and you're just starting out, you really get that chance to try out the different hats and see like, oh, these ones are for me, or maybe this one isn't for me. So
Which
it's not
is-
something they have to pick early.
Which is, of course, very difficult. As we've had a lot of conversations on transitioning, trying to get to that next step. It's very tough to make a decision about what you don't know. So this program gives them a chance to wear a few different hats.
Yeah, like you can even do things like if you want to run cable, like that's a part of the job. It's a more physical job. You're not sitting in front of the computer necessarily so much, but that's a huge part of it, and people make a living off of that. And they may find that like, oh, maybe the sitting down in front of the computer part wasn't as much for me, but like doing the cabling and setting up the infrastructure for like a campus or something like that really speaks to them. So that's something that they get to at least try out.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, what else about the program? Anything you're excited to see? Now that, again, we've got the first cohort going through it, we know we're going to get some great, I hope so, some great kind of feedback from their experience. What are you excited to see after our first group graduates?
Well, I'm really happy with the results from the first class. I think it's going really well. I think there's a few things that can do with some tuning. So I'm looking forward to doing some tuning for the next class. But in general, I think that it's gone really well. There's a little bit of you have to crawl before you can, walk, before you can run. That I think maybe the students need to hear about a little bit more, because they've gotten really excited once we got to the Fortinet stuff. But
The fun part.
yeah. But the project stuff wasn't quite as fun for them, So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to tuning the next one.
There's a paperwork component, and that part is boring for everybody.
It is, but we have to talk about it. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking about one of our previous conversations with some of the students. It's all of the layers of learning beyond just the exciting tech stuff.
Yeah, like being able to present something to management and explain, oh, well, I need to spend $12,000 of your company's money. Well, you better have a good reason.
Right. I remember hearing you talk in a different conversation about how people have this myth or this false understanding that IT, I get to sit in the background and just be on my computer, do my work. No, you have to talk with other people. You have to engage with other human
Yeah.
beings. There's a cooperation, a collaboration part to all jobs. So that this part that might not be sexy, can you talk a little bit more on how crucial it absolutely is? If you want to get a job, you have to have these other skills.
Sure. So, like, part of that is, like, when you're looking at IT in general, for the vast majority of IT professionals, your job is to support a business. You are not a moneymaker. You cost the company money to support
pressure
them
on.
with IT, right? Like, but if I'm running a company and I need like some sort of infrastructure, or like we're running a campus and I need all these computers set up and a server managed, someone has to be able to do that part. But you also need to be able to justify it, because when it comes to cutting costs, or when someone has a fiduciary responsibility to have the company be profitable, they're going to look at things that are just OpEx. And you need to justify your existence.
Right.
And part of being able to do that is to present yourself professionally and to explain to people why they need to have these things in their company. And it needs to be very organized as well. Nobody wants a disorganized IT team. Having lots of documentation and just being able to present things in a non-technical way to the people who aren't technical, so they can understand your message.
Right, there's
is really important.
A real layer of learning that almost validates your depth of understanding. If you can't communicate it in simpler terms, if you're almost restricted to only technical jargon, you kind of have a very static level of understanding. You have to be able to communicate, to be a translator. All companies really need somebody who can stand with 1 foot in the tech field and 1 foot in that decision-making room and be able to communicate.
And that's why we spend so much time in that specific module, where it's going to be the network projects and project management, is because it's towing the line between both parts of that, the technical side and the business side. And that's where we're trying to marry those two ideas together, because that's ultimately what you're doing in IT.
Gotcha.
And really, so my idea for the program was to just give them the experience of anything that someone who works on a network team might deal with. And part of that is sometimes you have to do things like re-IP a network, or you have to plan to purchase some equipment, and you have to, go research and figure out what equipment to purchase. Sometimes you have to write up a report to a C-level or something like that. And that's what the network project scenario section deals with, is just going through some of.
Well, we don't say it enough. We're always very intentional with the choices that we made to get there. So I know we're all excited to see the end of it. So I appreciate your time. Appreciate all the insights on network engineering immersive. Results coming soon.
Absolutely.
And thank you all for listening. We appreciate the time. Bye, guys.
Cheers.